Hey YouTube, Kier Twig here, bringing you all my Parshath Counter Fairies Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile for post-Duel Overload. With the release of Duel Overload, we were given the new Link 3 Parshath monster. It's a really awesome Link monster that just helps with the overall playstyle of the Parshath Counter Fairies, basically getting a lot of different counter traps on the field, setting up all your different fairy type monsters that have additional effects when you activate counter traps, increasing your life, destroying your opponent's cards, you name it, and then just being able to sit on these counter traps to stop all your opponent's plays while you get some of your bigger monsters out onto the field to actually do damage to them. I'm really happy with the results of the deck, and I've gone up against this deck like crazy in Duel Links. It's just an insane deck, being able to get the Parshath Synchro monster out from the extra deck that easily with the counter trap, and the playstyle is almost as dangerous in actual TCG with all these additional cards we have. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. Now I am missing a few of the monsters. I'm just going to point out which ones they are when I come up to some additional numbers for some of the fairies in the deck, and I'll mention which ones I would take out for some of the other Parshath monsters for the Sky support. So without further ado, for the monsters, I run 2 Sacred Arknight Parshath. If you activate a counter trap, or if you negate the activation of a spell or trap card or monster effect, except during the damage step, you can banish 2 other fairy monsters from your hand, field, and or graveyard to special summon this card from your graveyard if it was there when you activated, or even if the hand, if not. Or if this card attacks a defense monster, inflict piercing battle damage, and when it inflicts damage to your opponent, you can add 1 Parshath card or counter trap from your deck to your hand. So along with sharing the effect of the piercing battle damage against your opponent, it's just an easy special summon, since basically you summon this card out whenever you do the normal playstyle of this deck, and you have the other fairies set up as well. And being able to search out the mass amount of different counter traps that we run in the deck is just an added bonus with this card. I only run the 2 of it though. It's really all you need for that setup. When you open this card, it's that added bonus, but you have plenty of other support in the deck to go for your play style. And then, like I said, just relying on the counter traps for most of the ways to stop your opponent is your big go-to method of play. For some of the other fairy support, I'm also running 3 Bountiful Artemis. Now, I only have the 2. I spent so much time looking for a second copy. I forgot this card came out in Enemy of Justice. So I have 1 Honest here just as a placeholder, but you definitely want to run 3 of this card. Each time a counter trap resolves, immediately draw 1 card during the chain. So this is your draw power of the deck. It's not even a once per turn. As long as you have the counter traps to activate, you'll keep drawing cards with that chain. So having 3 of this is just an easy level 4 to summon out. I am a fan of Ties of the Brethren in the deck with all the different level 4 monsters we run, but Bountiful Artemis is definitely one of the best ones. Just having the options for that draw power gives you more and more cards to use in your hand, so opening up early game or just as a special summon target as well is a big help for the deck for sure. And I also have 3 of the Power Angel Valkyria in the deck. Now, I don't want to run 3. I would more than likely just like to run 2 of this card. If that were the case, I'd more than likely take out 1 for a Meltiel Sage of the Sky, which gives you additional life gain and just destruction of your opponent's cards. Plus, it's another level 4 option to special summon with Ties of the Brethren. But with Power Angel Valkyria, if you negate the activation of a spell or trap card or monster effect, add 1 Light Fairy monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Power Angel Valkyria once per turn, but there is your search power right there for Sacred Arknight. I say Arknight, Air Knight, I believe, Parshath, and then being able to have your fairy monster set up when you have Valkyria and Bountiful Artemis, let's say, on the field. So you special summon that card out is your main go-to play with that search power, and you'll get all these searches off with the counter traps that you activate, and you have a good amount of them, like I said, so it's guaranteed that you will resolve these effects. And one of my favorite cards in the deck is Guiding Ariadne. With this one, it's actually a pendulum monster, but that much more dangerous. For its pendulum effect, apply these effects. You do not pay life points to activate counter traps, and you do not discard to activate counter trap cards. So not even to pay life points for Solemn Judgment or Solemn Warning is very scary, just meaning you can have these cards free of cost. And on the field, if this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can reveal 3 counter trap cards from your deck. Your opponent chooses 1 for you to add to your hand, and shuffle the rest collapsed back into your deck. So more search power as well with Guiding Ariadne, but also just being able to set it up in the pendulum scale and then set more cards on the field, and then just have to, not worry about anything your opponent activates because you don't have to have any heavy costs. If your opponent gets a monster out and tries to attack you, no worry there, because then you'll still have the full amount of life points after relying on Guiding Ariadne in your pendulum zone. It's definitely a card your opponent's going to want to go after, but you have other cards to protect this card from being destroyed also. And I also have 2 Barrier Statue of the Heavens. Now, this is in here for the Ties of the Brethren play. I would prefer to just run 1 of this card. If that were the case, I'd take 1 out for a Minerva, Scholar of the Sky, just an additional life gain and recycle card. I would only run 1 of copies of Meltiel and Minerva for the fact that they're special summonable with Ties of the Brethren. So just 1 Barrier Statue as well, being the card that restricts your opponent from special summoning, except for light monsters, which doesn't really hurt you at all with this deck, since the majority of cards in our main deck are light monsters. So having this on the field won't hurt you at all. It'll just make your opponent want to attack over it. And as long as you can stop their monsters from getting out on the field, you'll be able to stop their special summons also. And then just for a couple other numbers for some of the extra support, I run 1 Zeradius, Herald of the Heaven. You can discard this card to the graveyard to add 1 Sanctuary in the Sky from your deck to your hand. If Sanctuary in the Sky is not on the field, destroy this card. So you have that option of a 2400 attack point monster, but more for the search power for your field spell. We also have the continuous spell that counts as Sanctuary in the Sky, so if you have that option on the field, you can keep Zeradius also as an option, or just be another special summon target if you want a 2400 attack point monster, as long as Sanctuary of the Sky is set up on the field. And I also just normally run the 2 Honest, just with the amount of different light monsters we are running. You have a good power boost if your opponent does manage to summon something and try to attack over. You can rely on Honest just to destroy your opponent's monster and then have them take more damage as well after that attack. And for the hand trap option for the deck, I'm going with 3 Ash Blossom myself, but if you wanted to run, let's say Nibiru, Effect Veiler, you name it, whatever you would prefer, you can be taken out and put into this spot. Ash Blossom is just my card of choice for the ability to stop your opponent's searches, and then also being able to rely on the card searches as well for anything your opponent may try to get out. So 3 Ash Blossom, definitely useful for sure. And that is it for the monsters, aside from the ones I specified to replace for some of the other Sky Fairy cards. For the spells I am running, we spoke about this card long enough, but 3 Ties of the Brethren. You pay 2,000 life, target 1 level 4 or lower monster you control for the rest of this turn. After this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters. Also special summon 2 monsters from your deck with the same type and attribute and level as that monster. And then you cannot conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this effect, but your setup is your main play to go for, having Battleful Artemis, then being able to, let's say, get an Honest, or the Barrier Statue, Guiding Ariadne, or Valkyria. Anything you set up on the field, and you're good to go for just, multiple searches, restrictions for your opponent, you name it, definitely a 3 of for that easy setup you can do. And getting more and more fairies on the field to then later set up in the graveyard can help to summon out Sacred, Arc, Air Knight, Parshath as well. And I also have 3 Sanctum of the Parshath in the main deck, but I do want to run at least 1 Sanctuary in the Sky along with this continuous spell, just so you have the search option with Zeradius to grab the field spell, and then also keep your spell and trap card zone a little more available for some of your counter traps, because then, Sanctuary in the Sky can go in the field spell zone. So 1 of these will be replaced for Sanctuary of the Sky. Preferably, if you want to try keeping all 3 of these as the continuous spell that counts as Sanctuary in the Sky, you can try that also, but at that point, I definitely do recommend at least 1 field spell. It becomes Sanctuary of the Sky while on the field or in the graveyard, and fairy monsters on the field gain 300 attack and defense. Set spells cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects. This also includes traps, I forgot to mention. And once per turn, you can target a total of 3 fairy monsters and or counter traps with different names in your graveyard. Place them on the top of your deck in any order. So that search power is very, very useful as well, depending on the recycle you want to use. It also helps with Pot of Duality in the deck, being able to set them on the top of the deck in any order, and then excavate them with Pot of Duality for that search. But like I said before, I want to just take out 1 for a Sanctuary in the Sky and keep the other 2 continuous spells in for that play. I also run 1 Valhalla, Hall of the Fallen. This is just an option to special summon more fairy type monsters from your hand onto the field, and then go for the normal summon if you don't have the Ties of the Brethren play. And I also run 2 Pot of Duality. I just spoke of the setup you can do with your Sanctum of Parshath, being able to set them on the top of of the deck, whichever ones you want, reveal them upon duality. I think it's really, really awesome just knowing the cards you're going to search and the one you'll want, obviously, with this card. It restricts your special summoning for some of the other cards in the deck, but if you just are going for your counter trap play, then, you know, just having that normal summon be your summon and then the counter trap setup, I'm completely okay with that also. And we've been talking about counter traps plenty enough for the deck profile. Let's go ahead and move on to the traps, which the only thing we are running trap-wise are the counter traps. I run 3 Rebirth of Parshath. When a spell, trap, or monster effect is activated, reveal 1 counter trap in your hand, then discard 1 card and pay 1,000 life points, negate the activation. If you do shuffle that card into your deck, then you can special summon 1 Parshath monster from your deck or extra deck. Now that doesn't limit you to what you can summon, so you can go for Avenging Knight Parshath or your Celestial Night Lord Parshath with no special summon restrictions, being able to get both of these cards out onto the field without having to use any other monsters. Very, very scary, but very useful. Also with Guiding Ariadne, making it so you don't have to discard any cards. You can use this free of cost and then just go for the special summon of your Parshath monster. And I also run 2 Divine Punishment. When a spell or trap or monster effect is activated while the Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field, negate the activation if you do destroy it. Just another easy counter trap made for the purpose of a play we're supposed to have in the deck, which is to set up the Sanctuary in the Sky on the field. So just another free counter to rely on and just an additional one to search out with some of the other cards in our deck. As for the actual Solemn Brigade, I am running 2 Solemn Warning along with 2 Solemn Judgment and the 3 Solemn Strike. These cards just make up such an important engine in the deck, so I wanted high numbers for all of them. It's quite scary that you can just, search out a good amount of these cards and rely on them for all the negation in the deck. And when you set up my favorite monster in the deck, not having to pay any life cost for them also is the added bonus for sure with this setup. So that makes for all of the traps, running all counter traps for that consistency for the main play style of the deck is very, very useful. Now we'll move on to the extra deck. I run 1 Avenging Knight Parshath. Now this doesn't normally get synchro summoned in this deck. It's only special summoned off of our counter trap. Once per turn, you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, change that target's battle position. If this card attacks a defense monster, inflict piercing battle damage. Once again, just another easy monster to special summon out onto the field to use against your opponent, so I like to run the 1 copy of. As for the Link monster, I run 1 Celestial Night Lord Parshath. You need normally 2 or more fairy monsters to make it. You can discard 1 card to add 1 Sanctuary in the Sky, or 1 card that specifically lists the Sanctuary in the Sky in its text from your deck or hand. Or if Sanctuary of the Sky is on the field, you can add 1 fairy monster instead. And if another face-up fairy monster you control is sent to the graveyard except during the damage step, you can banish 1 fairy monster from your graveyard to special summon 1 fairy monster from your hand whose level is higher than that banished monster. So it's basically giving you options for your boss monster, Sacred Arch Air Knight, and then just giving you more and more setup for searching, the Sanctuary in the Sky or the Sanctum of Parshath, since it also lists Sanctuary in the Sky in its card text. This card makes it so once you have it on the field, you're going to get the plays you want and the setup you need also. For some of the other Link monsters, I just run 1 Nightmare Griffin and 1 Borrelsword Dragon. For some of the bigger Link plays, when you can make them just as options, the only things I mostly go into the extra deck for are these 2 monsters with the counter trap setup, but still good to have other options as well, like Nightmare Unicorn, Nightmare Cerberus, and with the majority of level 4 monsters, I also want to run a good amount of rank 4 monsters, so I am running 1 number 41 Buguska, 1 Star Leech Paladynamo for the light monster option, same with Bujinte Tsukuyomi, also 1 Castel the Sky Blaster, 1 Gagaga Cowboy, 1 Tornado Dragon, and I also run the Utopia setup with 1 number 39 Utopia, 1 Utopia Ray, and 1 Utopia the Lightning to get the 2 attacks you can do with Utopia the Lightning, and also for the Honest setup, able to raise this card's attack even more. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoy the video. I was definitely excited putting this deck together. I know I was missing a few cards, but hopefully if you were just listening, you can see which ones I said to take out to replace for Meltiel and Minerva of the Sky. Just added options that definitely overall work for the consistency to help make the deck all the more powerful. And your basic go-to setup is just to rely on what cards you have in your hand. So whichever of the cards you open up with, just being able to use your Ties of the Brethren to special summon out the other multiple copies of cards in the deck. Just gives you more setup for your search power, draw power, restriction on your opponent depending on what you're going for. And if these monsters survive and you don't have the counter traps options, which you should, to get out your bigger Link monsters onto the field, or just your extra deck Parshath monsters, you can then use these monsters also to special summon out your main go-to card, which is your Link monster. But once again, that is it for the video. I hope you all enjoyed. Until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And Kira, Twig out.